racks in the business. Again, that's Pallet Rack City in Hialeah, 305-424-8547. Tell them Inside the Paint sent you. All right, let's get to it. This is a Bam day. It was going to turn into a different kind of Bam day. He had 7 turnovers.
Yes.
And, I mean, really fumbling the ball, not making the right decisions a lot in the fourth quarter. No Jimmy. But I've said this before. Chris Bosh with the big three. When LeBron and Dwayne were on the floor, Chris could always default. He could always kind of slide to the corner, let them make the plays, let them take the heat. When they were not around, Atlanta, San Antonio, Portland, and or Bosh time at the beginning of second quarters, it was on Chris. You look around and it's like that meme on Twitter, the Will Smith thing from Fresh Prince, where he walks into and there's nobody in the house.
Right.
There was nobody in the house.
But the difference, Ethan, is that Chris Bosh was a singular star before coming to the Heat. He had already played that role. I mean, for years in Toronto, he played that role. Bam never has. There's always been someone else here with him as a leading man. Dwayne's time, Jimmy coming in, Justice thought he was the man, whatever it is.
Right.
And until you are that person, and here's why I sort of gave him a pass on the 7 turnovers. The Nets did to him what the Heat do to every other team that has a singular star with the double teams and the traps. And even Bam said, until the last play, which we will go over, he was double teamed or trapped on every single play. You have to learn how to play through that, and the only way you learn how to play through that is to experience that. So by him being out there with no Jimmy Butler, all Steve Nash did is what Eric Spoelstra has done against Dame Lillard, against Trae Young, against everyone else. You have to live through that. Bam grew through that experience, preferably as it was in a victory, and now learns to be quicker and more decisive, just like Trae Young had to be, just like Dame Lillard had to be. So you grow through that. So I think that was a good spot right there. I think it was the opposite spot than they sort of expected. I think Jimmy almost sat out, and we'll get to injuries later, because they thought it was unwinnable and just come back and get the second half of the back-to-back. Instead, it turned into a winning experience and a learning experience.
And possibly a turning point experience. And you mentioned get through it. It's not just get through it in terms of the way you play through it, but it's also how you get through it psychologically. I remember even early in Dwayne's career, Dwayne would be bothered by the turnovers, okay, as he was trying to carry a team. I think what you learn over time when you become a lead player, nobody gives a damn about the turnovers if you take over at the end. How many bad games, okay, did Kobe have but made plays at the end? How many? LeBron had bad games in Miami but made plays at the end.
Ethan,
that's all anybody cares about.
The annual list of turnover leaders are the best players in the league. Why? Because they're allowed to play through their turnovers, because they dominate the ball and usage. The all-time turnover leaders is like the Hall of Fame.
Yes, right.
Because you're on the floor that much, you're counted on that much, that's part of it also. So as long as there were some hideous Bam mistakes also, don't kid yourself. But I think when he looks through the tape, he realizes he must be more instinctive and work a little quicker, sort of like he did on the last play.
Also, I want to get to this again, because there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, and we're not in the locker room this year like we usually are, so we don't get to see it as much. But you could see at the end of that game, his teammates wanted that for him. You could see the way that Iguodala set that play up to a certain degree, and that's why you have a veteran like that. You could see the reaction of the players after it. It was not just another guy makes a big shot at the end. It's the guy they wanted to make the big shot at the end. And I feel like that's why when we look back at certain games, nobody's going to remember that Harden didn't play, or that Durant was going to torch them for 60 if he didn't get hurt in the first few minutes. Nobody cares about that. Nobody remembers with Dwayne's games what the circumstances were that led to that moment at the end, right? All you remember is the moment and what it means for the particular player. And it just seems like this is a guy, unlike so many others that have been here in Miami, where it's like others believe in him more than he believes in himself. So that's why I feel to a certain point this is a turning point game. I don't know what it means for this season, okay, and we'll get to that, okay, because there's a lot of stuff they still got to get through.
Absolutely.
But I think for his career that he's done it. And Chris used to talk about that even, like you said, he did it in Toronto.
Right.
But he had to do it here in Miami to know he could do it with this group. And once he started making it, then he was big shot Bosh, okay? I feel like yesterday for Bam, if he's going to become a top 5 player ultimately in Miami Heat history, which I think he has the potential to do, yesterday to me is significant. I think we'll remember yesterday.
Yeah, you know what? And to me, Ethan, as much as the moment mattered, as much as the stats mattered, as much as the victory mattered, the postgame mattered to me more for 2 reasons. One, a single word, mommy. No one else is that human that when he was asked after the game who he received calls or texts from immediately, just the way he used the phrase, my mommy. Not my mom, not my mother, my mommy. He is so like the rest of us. He is so average Joe. He is such a regular person at times that you can't help but embrace that. And part number 2, and I wrote about it this morning at the Sun Sentinel and sunsentinel.com, was his post-game tirade, almost diatribe, about the way Jimmy Butler's post-game comments were cast the other day. And I think there's always some degree of guilt with us online, in print, in radio, to try to draw out the juicy bits.
Right.
And he was saying Jimmy Butler did not phrase his comments after the game as the other guys failed me. He phrased it as we failed as a team. And Bam said, so don't you guys start creating an issue that there's something between Jimmy and us? Because, Ethan, we both know the issues in Chicago with Fred Hoiberg. We know the issues with every single teammate in Minnesota. We know the issues in Philadelphia with Simmons and Embiid on whether they were winning players. Jimmy has a history of doing that. And I went back and I looked at Jimmy's comment. And in the single quote when he talked about failure, he used the word we 5 times.
Right.
And as I wrote in my story today, Bam has seen what a fractured locker room looks like.
Yes.
You and I know this because we're in the locker room. The Hassan Whiteside moments. The way the Heat locker room is set up, Bam's locker is on one side.
Yes.
Almost directly across, slightly to his left, is the locker of Hassan Whiteside when he was here. And Hassan very loudly would talk after the game about how he didn't get enough shots, how his stats made him plus minus this or that after a loss. And I think it would drive Bam to distraction. Then on Bam's right was Dion Waiters' locker for a player who was suspended 3 times. And it was, you know this, Ethan, you were with us pregame. Every time Dion walked in pregame, it was weird in that locker room.
Yeah.
It was the outcast guy. So here is Bam, 21, 22 years old, taking time after his career regular season moment, putting aside the Jason Tatum block, pointing out to everyone we're still a team. And what Jimmy did was in the name of team. And I didn't take it personally. I learned from it. I did get more aggressive. But don't you dare try to fracture us with Jimmy the way he was fractured in Chicago, the way he was fractured in Minnesota, the way he was fractured in Philadelphia. He's a special kid. He's a really special kid, Bam Adebayo.
He is, and I wonder at times if the fact that he is such a special kid, and I'm glad you mentioned Hassan, because I remember on draft night and talking to some Heat officials, and the first thing they said to me was, you're going to like this one. He's the anti-Hassan. And I know that you heard a lot of that too. They were looking for something completely different. They went polar opposite. They told me they did more research on Bam than any other player that they'd ever done before, and they came up with nothing negative, essentially. But I do wonder at times what he saw with Hassan, if sometimes it's gotten in his head too much. That the way that this organization is, that you do not ask for yours, right? You do not step out of line with Eric Spoelstra. You go with the culture line to the end. And then he saw not only the way it played out with Hassan, but as you mentioned, the way it played out with Dion, the way it played out with somebody that a lot of the players liked, JJ. Players liked James Johnson.
See, you know what's interesting, Ethan? You took out one name in one direction there. I'm going to go 2 lockers to James Johnson's right, Justice Winslow.
Yes.
Who last year, when Jimmy Butler came and was the guy, Justice still said, I want to be the man. I want to be the leader. And my God, those were 6, even beyond the injuries, difficult months because of that.
Yes.
We know that Bam and Jay Rich, just all the guys and Justice, they were all together. That was awkward too. So Bam has lived and understood and come to appreciate the awkwardness of it all. But you're right. But when you become too selfless, you know what? You have to be an SOB as an NBA superstar. You have to be selfish. You have to have a little Jimmy in you, a little Kobe in you.
Look at the way Dwayne changed. I remember Dwayne's rookie year, and he was the quiet kid. Okay, all the rest of this, it was this. I remember not having anything to talk to Dwayne about because there was nothing with Dwayne.
Right.
Shaq comes in and props Dwayne up. Right? This is the guy I want to play with, Flash, all the rest of this stuff. They started making up stories to the media about how they were working out at the gym until 4 a.m.
an hour before the playoffs.
All the rest of Dwayne changed dramatically to the point that a lot of us didn't like the way Dwayne changed. It was after Shaq left, I think, and Dwayne got his team back, that I think Dwayne changed back the other direction. But Dwayne didn't have that personality coming in. I mean, Dwayne was not, that, M bleeper, okay, that we're talking about. But he developed that over time where he started to believe my belief is stronger than your doubt and all the rest of this stuff where he got that. He started associating with as Bam is now, with other great players around the league, right? Dwayne had the Olympic experiences. You're going to be around Kobe. That's some of that's going to rub off on you. Bam is now around all these other greats. I think what you see in Bam is he's the perfect type of superstar in the fact, or could be, in the fact that he is grounded. He does understand where he came from. He's extraordinarily well liked by players around the league, which is going to help. You see that. I mean, like,
the post-game jersey exchanges, that David Holcomb having to come, the Heat security person between him and other players during COVID, as Bam, you can't be this friendly. And one other thing, Ethan, the Heat's mediocrity of the season, and we'll get into this later when we get into playoffs, I think works to Bam's advantage for another reason. When they're going to pick that Olympic team, they can't afford to pick guys who are going to be in the conference finals or the finals and then turn around a week later and go over to Tokyo. I think that's really going to play in Bam's favor.
If he's not bitter about that whole experience, which he may be. But here's the other point about yesterday. Who's the guy who tweets about Bam? LeBron. Bam. Okay, at the end. Okay. Again, that is, LeBron tweeting about a Heat player?
The fraternity of respect in the NBA.
Right. He has that, and that is going to help them from a free agency perspective. But ultimately, the next step of this, and I think we should probably talk about this in the next segment as we talk about Jimmy's return and potentially Victor's return, is Bam, do you do it when there are other elite players on the floor with you? That's the question. We saw him do it in Washington. Remember last season, there was nobody else, okay? Jimmy had, I think, fouled out of that game or something along those lines, or had gotten hurt, and he took over that game. Can Bam do this when Jimmy is out there with him? Will Jimmy push him to do this?
And yet, to me, that's not as essential for another reason, and we'll get to this also, is Bam is the bridge. This is not Bam time. Jimmy is 31 years old with next season and then a player option left on his contract as of now.
Right.
Bam is the bridge. He has the 5-year extension that begins next season. So I think for the Heat, they can slow play this to a degree because eventually this will become Bam's team, and that will turn it around also. So it doesn't have to be in the moment. I kept telling people all year, you know this, your commenters, you've been talking about this, is people who are ripping Bam for not being enough, and we've all said, wait, he's still on the rookie scale now.
Right.
The Heat are paying him next year to be great. The transition will come. But he's never going to be the great that people want as a 26-point-a-game scorer. It's just not in his DNA.
And look, if you look at the comparisons of players that we've talked about, if he can become a KG-level player, okay, which, again, that is the apex.
That's a hell of a Hall of Fame bar you just said.
Exactly. But if that is one of the models here, when KG won the most, it's when he stepped the game back a little bit. KG won the most in Boston when he did a lot of the things that Bam does now, okay? Right. It wasn't the KG in Minnesota, okay, who I think people want Bam to be now, right? Which is he's going to drop 30 on a given base. He's going to get, but again, Bam is at the stage now where he gets you an easy 20, 13, and 5.
When he's aggressive, and you know what the problem with Bam is? He still has 20% of 2 passive games that you have to shake him out of that malaise when he just floats. And maybe it's the COVID season, maybe it's the quick turnaround. You have to get rid of the floater games in there as well.
But the weird thing about it is most players, when they float, they'll float on the defensive end. He doesn't float on the defensive end.
No, he digs in.
He digs in. He floats. And that I know Cooper and others put the videos up yesterday, and I was watching it. Kyrie Irving went 0 of 8 with Bam guarding him yesterday. There are a litany of stars on this trail, as Coop calls it, the Bam lesson, that are these perimeter. I mean, literally, Kyrie Irving is the best ball handler in the league, is he not? I mean, he's top 5.
I mean, what he was doing yesterday, just the wizardry. He gets to any spot he wants, and he did, but Bam got to that spot with him.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to talk about Oladipo and Butler and their returns. And yes, later in the show, we are going to dig into Tyler Hero because interesting decisions made at the end of that game. Maybe we'll start there. Interesting decisions made at the end of that game, which I do think are a little bit telling in terms of where this thing may go now when Oladipo returns. Inside the Paint, brought to you by Pallet Rack City and Hialeah. We'll be right back on Inside the Paint.
Onside Radio, the only choice for the South Florida sports fan.
There's no need to drive around South Florida wasting valuable time looking for a new or certified pre-owned Acura. Go to the #1 volume sales dealership in the Southeast United States. Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. Purchase with pace and space in a dealership tailored to your needs. From home buying to providing that personal touch. Contact the 2020 Satisfaction Award winner Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. 888-776-5123. That's 888-776-5123. Or visit them at 15601 Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines.
I'm Ryan Seacrest. First responders are people who stand for a greater purpose. They will be there for you when nobody else is, to help you, your family, your community. This is their selfless promise. This is their sworn duty to protect, to serve, to help. They put themselves in harm's way for us. They come to the rescue at times when we need them most. First responders are making enormous personal sacrifices to keep showing up for us and fighting the good fight. Nearly 70% of all firefighters are volunteers. That means when they get injured or quarantined, they may not have a way to pay their rent or keep their family safe and fed. No matter who you are or where you live, when you call 911 and ask for help, first responders show up. Now, let's show up for the people who show up for us every day and every night.
Go to firstrcf.org and make a difference today.
It's toast. Smartest thing I did last year? Called B&T Windows and Doors and had PGT custom windows and doors installed in my house. Listen, it's spring. That means before you know it, we'll be hearing about the tropics churning. That means you need to get your home and family protected today. Call B&T right now and they'll get you installed ASAP with the best in the business, PGT Custom Windows and Doors. 954-233-0126 or bntwindowsanddoors.com. And P.S. Tell them you heard about them on Onside Radio.
When you need your warehouse looking good while staying efficient, there's only one place to find the finest racks in the business. Pallet Rack City in Hialeah. 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Pallet Rack City is the company you need when you want your warehouse sporting the finest racks in the business. After all, who doesn't love a great rack? Pallet Rack City. 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547.
Now that it's springtime, it's only getting hotter here in South Florida. Make sure your AC in your home or business is running smoothly by investing in a preventative maintenance plan from M&S Air Conditioning. And M&S is a Mitsubishi Diamond Elite contractor. When you purchase a new Mitsubishi electric mini split system, you'll get a 12-year warranty. Or install a high-efficiency polarized air filter in your AC unit that captures and destroys biological contaminants to improve air quality. M&S Air Conditioning have been providing prompt, honest, and reliable service for over 30 years. Schedule service or call to get more info on our preventative maintenance plans. Call 954-421-3680 or visit ac-florida.com.
Inter Miami fans, time to find out more about your favorite soccer team with OnSideRadio.com's IMCF Football Focus. Here's Austin Robillard.
Inter Miami took a loss in their first game of the season at Drive Pink Stadium. LA Galaxy with a great comeback to win overall 3-2 after Sacha Kljestan with his left foot beat John McCarthy at his near post. Chicharito ended the game with a brace. Also, Gonzalo Higuain got on the score sheet with a penalty and also assisted second-year player Robbie Robinson for his first MLS goal. The team looked promising. It wasn't an overall terrible performance, but you just have to be careful with those silly mistakes just like last year.
Keep up with the latest on La Rosa Negra by subscribing on most platforms. Search Onside Radio. Time for the hardcore basketball talk you crave. OnSideRadio.com presents Inside the Paint with Ethan Skolnick and Ira Winderman. To reach out to the guys, dial 888-441-4623. It's a flagrant foul if you're driving. Be safe, basketball fans. 844-416-8123. That's 844-416-8123. There's more to this game than just the score. So let's go inside the paint with two of the best in the business, Ethan Skolnick and Ira Winderman.
All right, welcome back to Inside the Paint, sponsored by Pallet Rack City in Hialeah. Thanks again for the sponsorship. Make sure that you check them out for the best racks in the business. All right, let's get to part two of this. We talked a lot about Bam here, Ira, in segment one. Let's get to some of the returning players and how this may look when they come back. Jimmy Butler missed yesterday because of the ankle. Ankle injury is pretty common for Jimmy. But I was told it was not so much that it was a terrible ankle injury, but that 8 games in 12 days.
I'm not so sure there was an injury.
Yeah.
I think the Heat are in the midst of, like you said, 8 games in 12 days. Mm-hmm. I'm not so sure Eric Spoelstra didn't somewhat plot this out. Say Goran's going to miss this game, Andre's going to miss this game. We ain't going to win against, I mean, not he'll ever say this. We're not going to win against the Nets, but we have to win against the Rockets. Jimmy takes this game. Again, this team has so many 30-somethings that you have to manage in this unbelievably compacted schedule that you know there will be another game when Goran is held out. There will be another game when Andre's held out.
I think Goran's held out tonight.
Okay, if you feel that confident against Houston, but you're right. You're right. Second game of back-to-back. I think the last 3 he's missed one of the 2.
Yeah,
so
he looked fresher yesterday.
And they have another back-to-back coming up at the end of the week with Atlanta, Chicago. So it's just unrelenting. So I'm not so sure that yesterday wasn't more of a scheduled absence for Jimmy Butler, more than necessarily the ankles acting up. It flared up. We've got to do that. This is the game you have to play as a coach in the NBA. You see it across the league. Stan Van Gundy mentioned this, and some others have also. Fred VanVleet mentioned it. This season was never about competitiveness.
Right.
This season was never about showcasing the NBA. This season was about sucking back every single dollar you could after last season and the start of this season, and just a cash grab. And that's what they're going through now. So I think a lot of this, of course, Victor is different, is more of managing your roster as well.
All right, so but we are expecting Jimmy tonight, I think. That's pretty much what I've heard. Again, I would expect maybe Goran doesn't play. Maybe Andre does play. Andre played pretty significant minutes yesterday, even though Ariza played, so we'll see where that goes. I thought getting KZ into the game yesterday maybe gives them a little bit of a different look. I tell you what, he looks good at the top of the zone. He still doesn't know. He still doesn't know what he's doing on offense.
He's active when it doesn't have to be scripted.
Right.
He's active when he's the energy ball you throw out there, sort of like they threw Precious out there in recent games. But there's also certain moments that are way above him, just like every moment has proven way above Precious Achiuwa in a playoff race. So playing KZ Okpala is never by choice or by first choice for Eric Spoelstra. It's by necessity, and that's what shows you this roster still has a lot of spots. I don't want to say of unplayable players, but, I mean, you know, Nemanja now is sort of in that group of why is he here? Udonis is I mean, Ethan, is Udonis Haslem going to play this season? Remember, this is not a season. In the record books, if he doesn't step on the court for a minute, it's not a season.
I think he'll get a minute or two at the end. But, yes, we'll see. We'll see what happens. You're right. It's a possibility.
So that's the thing. So there's not as many movable and mixable parts. It's funny. You and I, and you know this because we've done this, we always get caught up in the depth of a team. And Spoelstra, and we always try to pretend there's 2 separate units. Oh, they have this 5-man second unit, of which there's no such thing. Spoelstra likes 4 and then bringing back a starter after that anyway. But you could see in a season like this with so many 30-something guys. I mean, I was even feeling the last couple of games that Avery Bradley was one that got away. That if Tyler's going to be this bad, you know, when you're putting in your, I mean, I'm glad we didn't do the show after Minnesota. And you're starting the fourth quarter with your Gabe Vincent, Max Strus lineup. You just realized
Vincent Strus, Hero, Dragic, and Achiuwa.
It just begged for Avery Bradley.
That one's for the Hall of Fame.
So this depth, I think, is a little bit illusory from what we thought. You know, and you sort of saw that KZ gives you some energy moments. He will not sniff the floor during the playoffs or play in.
No, it is amazing, though. We talk about the depth not being what we thought. And yet what they're getting out of that Trevor Ariza spot is way beyond what I anticipated that they would get. I mean, he looks like Trevor Ariza at 28, okay? He's been remarkable. I mean, to me,
he's so smart.
He knows where to play. And that corner, if he can, all he's got to do is get to that corner. Just get to that corner. You don't want him doing anything else. You don't want him putting the ball on the floor. But just get to that corner. And he's been tremendous, and he's given them he's given them some rebounding.
He's better at the 3 than at the rim. At the rim, he's looked Haslem-like, Achiuwa-like, trying to get the ball through the rim.
But he's been terrific out there. All right, so we talked Jimmy. We do anticipate that he will be back. If not today, then certainly this week. But I expect it probably be today. Dragic looked a little bit better yesterday. I thought that was the most attack mode I've seen him in for a long time. I don't really care about the results as much. It's just that he was. There was an attempt to turn the corner consistently, which we have not seen. Oladipo. Woj had a report yesterday, which I wasn't really news to you or I. We discussed.
None of this is news. Everyone is trying to turn the Victor Oladipo story into major scoopage when it's a case when someone has pain.
Yes,
it's going to be pain yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The scoopage would be someone saying it's an MCL, it's an ACL, or something like that, which it is not because there's no new injury to point to. So no one can predict someone's personal threshold for pain, someone's personal threshold for not looking 100%, someone's personal threshold for risking $100 million potential free agent contract. There are so many other layers
But
here.
that's the other reason why. And I know Heat fans are frustrated because you and I both know how they are about injuries. But in particular, they are this way about injuries that are related to pain tolerance. Over the years, they will not tell if it's basically an up to the player situation. You and I both know this. They will give you nothing because they will say there's no update in it because they don't want to say something. First, they typically don't like to do it. It's a Riley organization. Spo takes on the Riley personality, but they also don't like to say something that puts the player in a box. Okay, so in other words, if they're to say we think he could be back for this time, then all of a sudden Victor hears that, or more importantly, his people hear that, right?
And by Victor, you mean Justice, so go ahead.
Correct. It's the same thing,
right?
It's the same thing. And then, so basically, then we did this with Justice for 6 months. And then basically, you come out and the player starts to feel like, okay, wait, I mean, I thought we discussed this, and I'm not really ready yet.
Except Vic is different because Victor's the one who in Indiana announced his timetable that even his coach didn't know.
Right.
Remember when
to the
Victor
media,
came
yes,
back from
yes.
his quad?
Yes, to
he
national
went.
media.
He went out nationally and said, "I'm coming back," and they asked Nate McMillan, he's like,
Yeah, we talked to Scott
okay.
Agnes about that, and that was basically the end for Indiana. But
And the other part of this is this. Eric Spoelstra wishes he's a hockey coach for one reason. He would love to tell us this. Upper body injury, lower body injury, and that's it. So yesterday before I go to the game, I told my wife, I said, I'm going to have to ask 2 questions that I know I'm not getting an answer to, so I have to phrase them. I try to do the lawyer questions. You've done this also. I know Eric Spoelstra is going to give these 3 words. No new update.
Right.
Most coaches have taken that on. So I started my question, Eric, I know there is no new update, but has Victor been doing any basketball-related activities? Eric Spoelstra's answer, there's no new update. I said, I understand that. Is there an expectation he will be back before the regular season from inside the team? Sorry, Ira, there is no new update.
Right.
So that's what we're dealing with. Now, Victor can go out publicly and say whether he thinks he's going to play or not.
Right.
His agent can say there's a certain confidence that he'll be back on the court, but you need to see it. But when it becomes a drama like this, I don't need no drama with 15, 16 games left in the
Right.
season.
It's not
I need
helpful.
to know either you're in or you're not because the Heat play a different style game when Victor Oladipo is on the court. There's not another speed guard on this team except for Goran Dragic once a week.
Right.
When Goran went end to end for the second to last bucket yesterday,
Right.
that was like, oh my God.
Before Joe Harris chucked him into the stands.
Yes, but then the second last one, like, oh my God. He put his head down.
Right.
He got a burst
That's why
of
I
speed.
said I thought yesterday was encouraging. There were some signs there, but you're right. You're not going to get that
So
all
Victor
the time.
is so different. I need to know and you need to know because they need to
But
know.
the important thing is, it's not so much if you and I need to know, or if the fans need to know. And I know the fans are getting irritated because Vic likes Instagram, and so Vic's posting pictures of his haircut, and everybody's like, tell us whether you're going to play or not. He's not going to do that. That's not what he uses his
Right.
Instagram for. Okay, but the question, you're raising a good question. Do the players know? Is it being shared internally with the players? And we know that the Heat are reluctant to sometimes share things internally with the players because then sometimes the players share things with the outside world. For instance, last year, right, when we knew that, you likely knew that Nunn and Bam were the 2 guys who had COVID, right, before the bubble.
Correct.
And all of a sudden they were doing a call with Goran, okay, and Goran's like, oh, yeah,
Yes,
but Bam and
yeah.
Nunn get here, right? And that one you couldn't hide because they're either there or they're
Right.
not. But in this particular case, I don't
And
know.
then you get, and also just let people know, and then you get texts during the actual interviews with people telling you what Goran meant was.
Well, right, and
Yeah.
like, no, we know what
Right,
Goran
yes.
meant because
He
we
just
already
told us,
knew.
yeah.
Right, he told us, but already it was sort of already known. We were trying to keep it inside. Don't get mad at the nice Slovenian guy, right? So that's basically what happened there. I do think that the important thing is, do the key players of the team, do Bam and Jimmy know? Because, like you said, it is a different style of game with Vic than it is going to be with anybody else. I also wonder, and I think we're going to devote our next segment to him, does Tyler Hero know? Because something's off with Tyler again, okay? And I don't know if it's, again, the league has figured him out, but he was playing well for about a 2-week stretch, and now, I got to say it, he's unplayable right now. Like what we said about Kendrick Nunn, like he's on. Watching that in person yesterday,
and
he
we'll
is
talk
unplayable.
about this. They pulled Tyler Hero in the fourth quarter. They never pulled
No,
Tyler Hero
last
in the
4
fourth
minutes
quarter.
of the game, Duncan
Yeah.
Robinson's in the corner, and like you said, if Tyler was out there, they would have played that thing totally differently. So we will talk here about Tyler because I think it's important that we get into him. We'll be back on Inside the Paint on OnSideRadio.com, talking Hero, Nunn, and more in a second.
You're listening to the Pallet Rack City Inside the Paint Show. For the best racks and warehouse supplies, call Eddie Pieta at 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Or visit them at 715 West 20th Street in Hialeah. Back with more Inside the Paint at OnSideRadio.com.
There are those who dedicate themselves to a sense of honor, to a life of courage, and a commitment to something greater than themselves. They have always defended this nation and each other. They still do. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Inter Miami CF fans, join us at our new home this season for all away games as we broadcast live at Dangerous Minds Brewing Company, 1901 North Federal Highway in Pompano Beach. Join Big O and Alex Dono for the live pregame, halftime, and postgame shows while we watch the games. Enjoy meticulously brewed beer on site, delicious artisanal pizzas, live music, and giveaways. So, the new home for all Inter Miami road games is at Dangerous Minds Brewing Company at the Pompano City Mall, where they'll feature all the Inter Miami games. Follow them on Twitter at Dangerous Minds B and Facebook and Instagram at Dangerous Minds Brewing, and visit them at dangerousmindsbrewing.com.
Join the Inter Miami family in 2021 by becoming a 2021 season ticket member. Enjoy enhanced access benefits and pricing not available to general fans. Visit intermiamicf.com/tickets for more information.
A message to help keep you safe. If doctors told us today that we'd made a breakthrough on COVID-19, saving thousands of lives, we would rejoice. Finally, a good news day. We'd feel less afraid that our loved ones would be struck by the invisible enemy. We'd start to feel hope that we could live our lives again. Well, a mask does all that. We can help protect others by covering our noses and mouths, which is how the virus mainly spreads. Masks are a ticket to freedom, to be out in the world, to getting together, back to work, back to doing what we want. If doctors announced we could save lives today, we would grab that breakthrough with both hands. While we wait for a vaccine, grab the breakthrough that's already here. When we're out, it's masks on.
Brought to you by the Ad Council. Every 2 minutes, a woman in the U.S. is diagnosed with breast cancer. And in that split second, her life changes forever. The toll of breast cancer is great. The need to support those who are battling the disease today is even greater. We're fighting alongside patients because we know one moment can change a lifetime. United by hope, we can end breast cancer. Join our fight. Save lives.
Keeping you informed in the world of sports. With an OnSideRadio.com sports update.
Inter Miami CF loses its opening match 3-2 to the LA Galaxy. Robbie Robinson got his first goal of the season off an assist by Higuain. Higuain also got a PK goal in the second half. Their next match Saturday versus Philadelphia Union. Bam Adebayo at the buzzer to lead the Miami Heat to a 109-107 win over the Brooklyn Nets. The Heat back on the court tonight as it's Kelly O revenge game. The Houston Rockets in town, tip-off 8 o'clock. The Marlins took 2 out of 3 from the Giants over the weekend. They welcome in Baltimore Orioles for a 2-game series starting Tuesday. And in soccer news, Jose Mourinho has been sacked by Tottenham. This is South Florida's home for local sports talk. This is OnSideRadio.com, and I've got mail.
Welcome back to Inside the Paint, brought to you by Pallet Rack City in Hialeah.
It's local. It's local.
For great racks and warehouse supplies, call them at 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Back to Inside the Paint. Here's Ira Winderman and Ethan Skolnick.
Hooah!
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on Inside the Paint, sponsored by Pallet Rack City in Hialeah. We've got a couple more segments here. We're going to pivot a little bit. We talked about the good from yesterday. There's one more good thing, and then we'll touch on Tyler Hero after that, which is the backup center has been a huge hole this year. As much as we've talked about the four, which it looks like Trevor Ariza has filled that at least for now, they just haven't had anybody playable at the backup five. Precious got off to the good start. We've talked about all the reasons for this. No conference tournaments, no NCAA tournament, no summer league, no real training camp. Hit the rookie wall. He's just not playable at this point. Not for anything, but like you said, maybe occasional KZ minutes to kind of change the pace of a game. Sort of like Spoelstra used to use Chris Silva, to be honest. But pretty
activity,
much
burn your 5-6 fouls, and
that's
call
it.
it a night.
And that's it. Okay, now they bring in they obviously trade Kelly Olynyk, who's now Kelly Bird in Houston. He's here tonight. And they bring in Bielitsa, who's supposed to be kind of a Kelly facsimile, but it does not appear that that's really the case. As you mentioned, he's slower.
Defensively, there's no place for him on this team.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of guys in this league when fans want trades and even sometimes teams, you look at the best of a player, but you don't realize the rest of a player.
Right.
So Bielitsa, and a lot of people like this, can give you a highlight tape, can have some of those three-point games like he did against the Heat this year when they played Sacramento.
Right.
But overall, the consistency that the Heat insist upon from their players isn't there. So he's a change of pace guy. Maybe there's another game like when they put Max Strus in the game in Minnesota, when you just need a three-point shooter, he still could get spotted there. He could get spotted in specific situations, maybe late in the games when you need another guy, but he's not an answer. And then as I'm sitting there courtside or the second tier yesterday watching the game, and you look at Dwayne Dedmon and you say to yourself, yeah, that's what an NBA center can do.
Right.
That's what the big body that the Heat were seemingly so against using can do. Don't overstate the expectations. Go in there, throw your big body around, secure the rebounds, reduce the second chance opportunities, and that's what he did. That was really encouraging yesterday.
I mean, you're talking about 10 points, 10 rebounds with one shot in 15 minutes, but to me it wasn't the numbers. Just was like a professional level box out. Like, because I was actually baseline yesterday on the scouts table, and I'm just watching him box out. The arms are out. His feet are positioned. He knows where everybody's coming from. He's not going to let any flyers get in past him. How many times this year have we seen the Heat beaten on the backside? Okay, by mostly when Bam's not in, but sometimes when Bam is switched, beaten on the backside by some guard flying in. Okay, for an offensive rebound.
Right.
Didn't happen yesterday when Dedmon was in.
And the problem with the Heat, and it still is a problem, because remember, when Dedmon's in, Adebayo won't be in. That's just an Eric Spoelstra way. We got to live with that. Is that the Heat have no shot blockers, and opposing teams know that. And more you're seeing that. They know if they get past the initial defender or even the initial defender on their hip, they're gold to the lane. They're gold to the basket. There are no shot blockers here. That's a problem. To add that into the equation, at least when Dwayne Dedmon is in, you have to alter your approach. And then that gets in your head a little. And then maybe you don't realize he's not in there and they're going a different direction. That's still the maddening thing to me, and I saw it particularly early in the game, is the way the Nets would lift Bam out of the post defensively, and Durant, with his size over anyone else, could take control and go to the basket. It's funny. If the Heat would have lost yesterday, this could have been as simple as this. Bam doesn't hit the last shot. They win in overtime or something like that. Or Kyrie hits a shot before. You and I would still be talking about the systematic shortcomings of the Miami Heat and how they're digging their own grave.
Right.
So I still think there are issues there. One, issues that can be helped by Victor Oladipo coming back, his speed, his defensive prowess. Two, by playing more Dwayne Dedmon. So they're going in the right direction, but there's still something there systematically that I do wonder if Pat Riley calls in nicely Eric Spoelstra to his office and says, hey, I know your stubbornness has led to your greatness, but maybe we need to alter just a little bit.
Possibly. But if you do look at this conceptually, best case scenarios, okay, which is really the only chance the Heat have to compete for anything this year is with best case scenarios, okay?
True.
So best case scenario, you plugged your three holes, okay, essentially, because one of your holes was player to start next to Bam who can make a three, okay, and do something defensively to help him out. Ariza has done that.
Right.
Your second hole was speed guard who can create some scoring, ball handle, take some pressure off of Jimmy. And defend. Victor conceptually does that. And the other thing was a backup big to get a damn rebound and set a damn screen. I mean, not only that, there was one box out. He runs down the court, Dedmon does. I haven't seen this in forever. He literally bodied 3 players out of the way before the set started.
He owned the paint.
It's his, okay? And again, people are like, where was it? Well, he was rehabbing, okay? Otherwise, I think this is a player that he would have brought in a lot earlier. They had him in Summer League a few years ago.
Except, Ethan, so many teams have moved away from that player, and I'll give you the example yesterday. The Nets had a chance to match that force with DeAndre Jordan.
Right.
But they've moved in a different direction also. I think it's hard for some teams to recognize that there still is at least a 12, 15, 18-minute a game plays for old school. So I think the league's approach has marginalized those guys. That's why we're not seeing them, and you can see the change of pace they can bring.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think Eric's going to go to him a lot. I think yesterday there's a certain comfort and calm with him. The other thing,
do you think Eric chose that, or do you think Eric was nudged toward that?
I think probably nudged. But I think it helped that Eric knew the player. Because again, they did have him in Summer League, and I've talked about this. I literally sat at the table at Orlando and talked about Dwayne Dedmon in 2013 while Dan Craig was coaching the team. Okay, he liked him then. Okay, so he knew and liked the player, and I think he trusted the player. And the player, I know, had good recommendations from other veterans around the league. He's like what you want from Hassan, not really the shot blocking, but without any of the airs, right? It's just like if Eric could have had that Hassan, okay, just don't talk about it. We're not going to throw you the ball in the post. He would have taken it. I think the problem is not the big. I think the problem is the big who demands more than the big should demand in the modern NBA, and that's where Hassan was the imperfect storm.
And that's why he's even being phased out in
Sacramento. For all that. All right, let's pivot, but we think Dedmon's going to have a role going forward as he should. All right, let's pivot to Tyler Hero here. We can't really get past it. I mean, the last 3 games. I mean, he's now minus 70 in his last 6. Okay, now I know the Heat have lost some of those games, but nobody is close. And it's not just lineup combinations. It is leaving. I mean, again, turning Landry Shamet into Malik Monk, and the kid's name in Dylan Brooks and all the rest of these. I mean, if he's not confident offensively, he's such a liability on the other end at this stage, to my eyes. That are we at the stage where when Oladipo comes back, you play Kendrick Nunn instead of Tyler Hero?
Okay, so you really want to phrase that is, should they be at the stage versus will they? Because
Correct.
I just think the end of the day, every decision the Heat make will always put Tyler Hero ahead of Kendrick Nunn for this reason. They didn't move him at the trade deadline. Pat Riley came out with that typical Pat overstatement, how he could be a superstar, which, of course, is an attempt to keep the value higher for the next round of trade negotiations anyway. But even Eric Spoelstra, I think they still see something special that Tyler could provide in any given game, and they're going back to last year's playoff run. What people forget is Tyler Hero also shot 43% in the totality in the playoffs.
And was bad in the finals.
Had 4 games against the Lakers below 42% from the field.
Right.
You start to get figured out. I think Tyler Hero, and I've said this to you before, and we spoke about this at trade deadline, is going to be a career 6th man who might be Vinnie Johnson-esque for the old schoolers, Lou Williams for the more recent people. I think that's his upside as a 6th man, but not as someone you rely on day to day. He should not get the call at the moment based on a meritocracy.
Right.
But the NBA is not a meritocracy for this reason. Kendrick Nunn is a pending free agent. We're one outlandish outside offer, and it's bye-bye.
Right.
Tyler Hero's still under a rookie contract, and therefore will get the benefit of the doubt. But I also think you know what? I'm going to leave this to you and all your other websites and things like that. There's some personal issues there also.
Yeah, I know.
And the one thing it used to be, Ethan, is you and I would have to dig for the backstory. We would have to talk to scouts at courtside and other players and find out. With social media now, everyone knows
players
the backstory.
Put it out themselves.
Not only that, and players' girlfriends put it out themselves.
I know.
And I talked to some other beat writers about this also. We almost behave like voyeurs these days, in that we have to go to the coach's wife's Instagram, to the player's girlfriend's Instagram, and it's weird and it's uncomfortable. And yet that's where sources of information are. Tyler Hero chose to become a celebrity. He chose to become something outside the game.
We saw it coming, though, from the very beginning.
His rights with
and we
his
asked him
breakfast cereal
Right.
and his Tyler Tuesdays and his Chipotle Bowl, and that's all well and good. But you know what? Other players, when they see a player doing that before they've truly reached it, I don't know if I want to say there's a jealousy, but I think the pros, guys, we spoke about in the first segment here, we talked about Bam growing as a pro. When we talk about this, they sort of take an askance view of the guy and say, wait a minute, buddy. you haven't done anything yet.
Well, look at what you mentioned Bam. Look at the way players around the league react to Bam, and look at what Tyler gets on social media, and you see the difference. And
Yes.
I don't think it's just again that this is the white guys getting too much attention or anything like that. I think again Tyler has brought a lot of this on himself, and I, and like you said, or maybe like I said, this isn't the first time. You and I have been around long enough. We know enough significant others. Okay, we've heard enough stories. I've talked to enough players' wives over the years that I didn't even solicit. They would just share information with me.
It's just weird,
okay?
right? This is not Miko Grimes. This is you have to look a little, but it's all out there anyway.
It's all out there.
But and again, the other thing is, I know we're up against the break. Think about this. Bam Adebayo got his deal correct with Jordan Brand this year,
Yes,
right?
yes.
How little he's made of that. That some other guys would blow that up in all their social media.
Whereas Tyler Serial's promoted on my timeline.
Right, and put it in your face, and instead
Right.
you're trying to get heroes.
Right.
Fruit Hoops.
Right. Look, again, everybody's entitled to their own personal life.
And you can choose to play it out the way you want.
And we don't try to bring it up. And look, there's the greatest player in Miami Heat history. There was a lot of stuff that we knew about that we didn't talk about. Okay, it's just the way that this played out. And, and he grew through some things, and we all know who we're both talking about. But ultimately, the team starts to get a certain level of concern.
Right.
In this particular case, the team has been concerned now for months. And that's kind of where it's at. But they were concerned. They were concerned with players during the Big Three era. But this one is different because this kid is 21.
But I just hope, if it really is the Miami Heat are all about winning and all about the moment, that a meritocracy takes over.
Well, if it's a
at some
meritocracy,
point.
Kendrick Nunn has outplayed Tyler Hero lately.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
That's the deal. All right, sponsored by Pallet Rack City. You can find them, of course, in Hialeah. We'll tell you more about them when we come back. One last segment here on Inside the Paint for this Monday.
Hold on, don't talk. The mouse is frozen.
You're listening to the Pallet Rack City Inside the Paint Show. For the best racks and warehouse supplies, call Eddie Pieta at 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Or visit them at 715 West 20th Street in Hialeah. Back with more Inside the Paint at OnSideRadio.com.
On the battlefield, there's a saying America's military men and women live by. Never leave a fallen warrior behind, ever. Off the battlefield, Wounded Warrior Project operates with the same goal. Wounded Warrior Project was created to help our men and women returning home with the scars of war, whether those scars are physical or mental. Wounded Warrior Project. We never leave a fallen warrior behind, ever. Learn more about what we do at woundedwarriorproject.org.
No word in the English language is less convincing than probably.
Are you sure we should get matching tattoos on our first date?
Sure. We'll probably stay together.
Probably? It's been 23 minutes since I ate. I can probably swim.
You should wait 30 minutes.
Okay, now tell me what to do. Cannonball! Cramp! Oh, I have a cramp.
I can probably hit the green from here.
Probably.
Can I get a mulligan?
Ready to go?
Hey, are you sure you're okay to drive?
Yeah, I'm pretty sober. Yeah, I'm probably okay.
Probably okay isn't okay, especially when it comes to drinking and driving. If you're drinking, call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Inter Miami CF fans, join us at our new home this season for all away games as we broadcast live at Dangerous Minds Brewing Company, 1901 North Federal Highway in Pompano Beach. Join Big O and Alex Dono for the live pregame, halftime, and postgame shows while we watch the games. Enjoy meticulously brewed beer on site, delicious artisanal pizzas, live music, and giveaways. So, the new home for all Inter Miami road games is at Dangerous Minds Brewing Company at the Pompano City Mall, where they'll feature all the Inter Miami games. Follow them on Twitter at Dangerous Minds B and Facebook and Instagram at Dangerous Minds Brewing, and visit them at dangerousmindsbrewing.com.
These are unprecedented times, challenging how the YMCA works to strengthen community as we have for nearly 170 years. But we've always found ways to help people and communities in times of crisis. Right now, Ys across the country are providing emergency childcare, shelter, food programs, and outreach to seniors. But we can't do it alone. Whether you're connected to the Y or have a fond Y memory, we need you to stay with us. Reach out to your local Y today and stay with us for a better us.
There's no need to drive around South Florida wasting valuable time looking for a new or certified pre-owned Acura. Go to the #1 volume sales dealership in the Southeast United States. Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. Purchase with pace and space in a dealership tailored to your needs. From home buying to providing that personal touch. Contact the 2020 Satisfaction Award winner Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. 888-776-5123. That's 888-776-5123. Or visit them at 15601 Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines.
At OnSideRadio.com, we chirp all day and night. It's time to do some more chirping with David Dwork at our Chirping the Cats report.
The Panthers are finally back in South Florida following a 2-week road trip, and they kick off a 4-game homestand tonight when they host the Columbus Blue Jackets at BB&T Center. Florida's coming off a strong showing in Tampa, picking up 3 of a possible 4 points following 2 games against their cross-state rival. Right now with the Cats, it's all about the new guys, with several deadline additions making instant contributions. Sam Bennett picked up a pair of assists in his Panthers debut on Saturday, skating on a line with Jonathan Huberdeau and Anthony Duclair. Brandon Montour has fit in nicely and looked great paired up with Marcus Nuchavara. Nikita Gusev has flashed some offensive flair, particularly on Florida's top power play unit, and Lucas Wallmark has been strong defensively while winning 55% of his faceoffs since joining the Panthers. We'll see if those trends continue when the Cats open a back-to-back set with the slumping Blue Jackets tonight. Columbus arrives in South Florida having lost 5 straight and 12 of their last 14 overall.
Keep up with the latest on the Florida Panthers by subscribing on most platforms by searching Onside Radio, your home for South Florida sports. Welcome back to Inside the Paint, brought to you by Pallet Rack City in Hialeah.
It's local. It's local.
For great racks and warehouse supplies, call them at 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Back to Inside the Paint. Here's Ira Winderman and Ethan Skolnick.
Hooah! Welcome back on Inside the Paint on OnSideRadio.com, sponsored by Pallet Rack City. One segment left here with Ira. We typically go over schedule going forward, but there is a little bit of a news item we got to get to. The Heat can sign a 15th player as of today. We're talking off air, though. It may not be the wise thing to do.
Yeah, there's a bunch of machinations. They actually could have signed a player at any time, but because of the luxury tax, today's the day that the dollar per dollar, day by day, the rest of the season scheduling allows them to sign a player and not exceed the luxury tax this season. That's important going forward. Because of the repeater tax, they could sign a player for the playoff roster any day until the final day of the regular season, provided he was played in the league this year and was released by April 9th, did not play in the league at all this year, so there's some options, or was on a 10-day contract after April the 9th. I think right now they could sort of look at every box and go 3 deep if they want. I think they save it for this reason. If there's an injury and you fill the wrong position, you're kind of screwed. So I'm not wishing bad upon anyone, but say Trevor Ariza or Andre Iguodala go down. Maybe you look for a defensive-minded wing to add in there. So I think that's one reason for prudence and patience. Another is if everything goes swimmingly and Victor Oladipo comes back and you're not going to go deeper than 10 deep on game days anyway, you can do what you did 2 years ago with Kendrick Nunn. You sign a prospect last week of the season. You give him a guarantee for the rest of the season. Woohoo, there's $50,000. And then you sign him to a non-guaranteed deal for another season or 2. You should likely have Summer League this year. You will have a summer program and a regular, full preseason training camp. So I think that's another direction, especially when you don't have a first-round pick this year, that you can add the player who you can sort of sell to your fans and to your management as this would have been our first-round pick. He was great in the G League. He was great overseas or something like that. So keep an eye on that. I would be very surprised if they act immediately, which means based on the timing of our show at 11:01 today, they will sign someone.
Well, and also if you're getting Oladipo back too, then you're getting another useful roster spot there. So you may not need it. All right, let's get to the schedule. It's a big week for the Heat. There's no way around it. They have to win tonight against Houston. I mean, you can't have another game. And look, the letdown after the win against Brooklyn with Bam, if they lost tonight, it would be ugly. But let's get to the rest of the week. You've got a couple against the Spurs. You've got one against the Hawks, which is, you got to get that tiebreaker or at least put yourself in position there against Atlanta. We've talked sort of off the air today. We'll probably do more on this next week about the play-in situation and everything else. they have to beat that team, right? I mean, of all
For
the
so
wins
many
this
reasons.
week.
To me, this is make or play in week. Honestly, I think so, because of not only is Atlanta going to decide the season series, they're tied 1-1. They gave up that bad loss the day Nate McMillan took over as coach of the Hawks. But remember, Ethan, in multiple team ties, you create a substandings. So if you're going to carry a 1-2 in there against the Hawks, and let's say you lose your last game to Charlotte and you wind up 0-3 against them, that really hurts you even with your 3-0 against the Knicks. So those substanding games left against Charlotte and Atlanta are huge because they could help determine where you're going to fall 4, 5, 6, or 7. You have that going on. You have the Spurs coming up on Wednesday on the road this week, then next week at home. I mean, there's just a history there. You know, Popovich and the Heat, and they figured out each other. There's great respect between the teams, but any game against a Popovich team is hard. In the intervening, you have 2 games against the Bulls at home. No excuse time. No more Minnesota Timberwolves games.
Yeah,
You
I don't
can't
want to hear
afford
about
those.
the Vucevic thing.
You and I have talked about all season about the Pistons game they lost at home. You know, there's just too many games like that. Show who you are, because, Ethan, I will tell you this. If the Heat get to a point where they're 3 games behind the Knicks and the Celtics and the Hawks, then all of a sudden you have to say, maybe we rest our players the final week of the season, because we're going to have a huge one and maybe done play-in game against Charlotte, maybe with Hayward back, maybe with LaMelo Ball back. And if you lose that, a one-and-done game against the Indiana Pacers, who already twice have won here at American Airlines Arena.
Yeah, well, and again, the letdown for that, and then the fact that you would have to basically get Ariza, Dragic, Iguodala, Butler through that stretch just to get to
and
a
then
playoff
2-3
series.
days later, playoff series. It was interesting. In one of our conference calls, Cooper Moorhead of Heat.com asked Eric Spoelstra, did you realize the playoffs are delayed again like the old days for a week because of the play-in games? And Spoelstra said, yeah, I don't think we're going to take our team up to Boca Raton like Pat Riley did for a pre-playoff camp. And there was the thought that was when the Heat was winning. You were feeling good about it.
Now it's like
there's no
Cuban
wiggle
gets,
room. And also, just to
stuck in it.
conclude, I would say this. You can make no assumptions about this Heat team. They're not good enough to assume they'll win any game, including even if a John Wall goes off tonight for the Rockets.
Let's get to one more piece of this, and then we got to go. Again, Inside the Paint, brought to you by Pallet Rack City in Hialeah, 305-424-8547. Right now, if I was to say to you, do they get out of that play-in situation? Do they get to 6 right now? Because I want them at 5 to avoid Brooklyn, but do they get to 6?
It's all up to the Knicks. I think it'll come down to the Heat and the Knicks. I think the Celtics have a strong closing schedule. I think the Hawks can get the tiebreaker. I think it comes down to Heat Knicks. Welcome back to the late 90s.
Oh, that would be fun. Well, maybe not for the Heat. Inside the Paint on OnSideRadio.com. We'll be back next Monday. Kai in here next.
You're listening to the Pallet Rack City